Chapter 5. Retaking Kingship. "Hey, Joey, I think I found him," called Alfred. "Where?" asked Raynor. Alfred pointed to a small, isolated figure trapped in the midst of one of the larger patches of fire, surrounded by a group of Skrulls. "Oh, damn," said Raynor. "Are you sure that's him?" "I hope so," said Alfred. "He came from the direction you thought he went, and it looks like his armor's too big. I don't see anyone else alive over there either." "Well, all right then," Raynor said, gritting his teeth as he loaded a bolt into his crossbow. "We'll have to deal with the fire himself, but we can at least give him a hand with those things." "Right." Raynor took aim at one of those Skrulls nearing the lone figure and fired. Zack swung wildly as the first enemy warrior reached him. The blade slammed into the jagged black plates, covering his shoulder and stuck there. Zack strained to wrench the blade free as the warrior raised its own blade. The bolt struck it through the eye. The warrior collapsed onto its back, taking Zack's sword with it. "No, damn it!" Zack cursed. "Well, at least someone seems to have heard me," he thought. "But what now? How am I supposed to defend myself?" He looked around for any weapon within reach as the next pair of enemy warriors closed in on him. He reached out and snapped a flaming branch off the fallen tree behind him. He thrust it into the nearest warrior's eye, and it stumbled backwards with a horrific cry. "I can't do this," Zack thought, desperately jabbing at the next warrior. "I can't fight like this." The branch snapped as it scraped against the warrior's helmet. The warrior snarled and swung its sword at his face. Zack ducked down just in time. "But I can't run either. Before Zack had straightened himself, the warrior's metal boot smashed into his face, sending him flying into unconsciousness with a taste of blood in his mouth. "Right this way, sir," said the soldier. "He's been there since we dragged him out of the tower." "I see," Schultz replied. He was following the soldier through the castle's ground level, hoping to find the king. He did. King Alexander was sitting alone near the base of the central tower, staring at the sky. "Sire?" Schultz asked, hesitantly approaching him. "Is that you, Schultz?" the king asked, in an uncomfortably calm voice, without looking down to see him. "Yes, sire," said Schultz. "Things aren't looking good." "Oh?" "The Skrulls have entered the castle," said Schultz. "They've breached a hole in the wall surrounding the courtyard." "So, stop them then," Alexander replied vacantly. "We're trying, sire," Schultz said, gritting his teeth. "I've sent Harrison's squadron to the courtyard to fend them off, and we're trying to evacuate the civilians there, but I don't know if it'll be enough." "It doesn't matter." "What?" Schultz blinked. "Sire?" Alexander sighed as he finally looked down to meet Schultz's gaze. "It doesn't matter," he said, a bit more matter-of-factly. "The Skrulls are fighting a lost battle. In an hour or so, it'll all be over." "What do you mean?" asked Schultz. "How?" "The sunrise," Alexander replied. "They can't survive in pure sunlight. It kills them." "Really? Why?" "Yes," Alexander smiled slightly. "It undoes the dark magic that created them. It burns them to ashes." "Well, that's somewhat of a relief, but we've still got to hold them off for at least an hour." "I'm sure you can do it, Captain," said Alexander. "In fact, I order you to. But don't just drive them off. Keep them in the plains if you can. Keep them here until sunrise. Sire, don't give them a chance to retreat," Alexander continued, his expression darkening. "Let them burn." Schultz stared at the king for a moment, unsure what to say. Finally, he cleared his throat. "Right, sire," he said. "I'll go give Harrison's squadron a hand in the courtyard. Thanks for the help." With that, he ran off to do just that. "Well," Schultz thought as he ran, "if what I heard is true, he's at least taking it better than I expected." Amy blinked her eyes open. Pain. She was in pain. "Well, at least that means I'm not dead," she thought bitterly. She tried to push herself up, but collapsed immediately. She cursed. "Oh, well, at least I can talk," she thought. That's something, I guess. She managed to turn her head to get a better look at her surroundings. She was in a canyon of dirt, the inside of the castle moat. The moat was illuminated by a large pile of burning wood a couple meters away from her that appeared to be the remains of the Skrull's plank-carrying cart. Well, that's a good sign, she thought, managing a smile to herself. Oh, but that, on the other hand, just beyond the burning wreckage, was a small group of Skrulls that were very much not dead. They must be the ones I sent down here, she realized. Huh. Guess they'll be pretty pissed if they recognize me. What am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to know? I don't know, but I'm gonna have to come up with something. Oh, wait, I got an idea. Really? What is it? I should play dead. They probably won't even notice me. That's your big idea? Well, why don't you come up with something? I did. We're both the same person, remember? Right. Anyway, that's probably my only option at the moment. And so Amy laid there, watching the Skrulls through half-closed eyes, hoping they wouldn't come near her. Schultz entered the chaotic mess that had become of the courtyard. Although the western half was still mostly unscathed, the eastern side had become a frenzied battlefield, almost worse than the one outside. Corpses from both sides lay strewn about between the scattered clumps of fighting soldiers and Skrulls, any sense of organized formations abandoned. A few of the buildings surrounding the chaos had caught fire, while several others had taken different kinds of abuse from the crossfire. Sir Harrison, Schultz called as they neared the fighting. Harrison, where are you? He's dead. What? Schultz turned toward the young soldier who had answered him. He's dead, Captain, the young soldier repeated. First one to fall when we reached the courtyard. Damn it, Schultz sighed. We aren't going to be able to fend him off in this state. I don't know about that. Schultz turned to see a second young soldier who looked nearly identical to the other. I already killed 15 of these bastards myself, the second soldier said with a smirk. And it looks like they've stopped coming in. Once we clear these ones out, we should be good. So, Neb, how many have you killed so far? 20, the first soldier replied. It's not like it's a competition. Not with that attitude, it's not, the second soldier replied. Try to keep up. With that, he ran off to rejoin the fighting. What was that about? That's my brother, Ben, Neb sighed. He's a dumbass, but he's got a point. Even without a leader, at this rate, we'll have the last of these things wiped out in no time. Feel free to join in if you'd like, but we don't need more backup if that's why you came. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got to go make sure that little brat doesn't beat my score. With that, Neb ran off after his brother. Well, all right then, Schultz muttered, almost smiling as he drew his sword. To victory! Pantel Rogers approached a small crowd gathered near the northwestern corner inside the castle. Many of them were dressed in red and white uniforms. Is everyone here? He called out. What about Smith and Youssef? Anyone seen him? He was met with silence from the crowd. I thought you were going to go check on them, Roberts, the guard, finally replied. I did, Rogers sighed. There were a bunch of guards outside the dungeon when I went. I was hoping they made it out before that, but it's looking like it's not the case. So what now? One man asked. We'll continue as planned, said Rogers. For now, at least. Once you all get up to Hathriax, make sure to inform Governor Braddock of the situation. We'll leave it up to him to decide how we handle this. Aren't you coming with us? Asked Roberts. I'm afraid not, said Rogers. I'm still needed to coordinate our efforts here. But if things go well, I'll see you all again soon. Now go. Glory to Sharpclaw, Rogers saluted to the crowd. Glory to Sharpclaw, they echoed, matching his salute. Then one of the soldiers from the crowd stepped up to the castle wall and undid a concealed latch. A small section of the wall opened up to reveal the start of a long underground tunnel. The crowd began to file into the passageway. Rogers turned away and started back towards the dungeons. Oh no, you don't think he's dead, do you? Alfred gasped. I don't know, Rayner replied, gritting his teeth as he stared at Zadok's motionless figure below. But we have to assume he's not. We have to hope he's not. We keep those things off him till this is over. Yeah, but Joey, I've only got 4 arrows left. Huh, oh, Rayner replied, checking his quiver. I've only got 2. He glanced around. The few remaining archers were too busy to give them more, if they even had any to spare. What are we gonna do? Alfred asked, his eyes wide. How? It's fine. What? It'll be fine, Raynor repeated, taking a deep, steady breath. 4 arrows, 2 bolts. I only see 5 scrawls left around him. That gives us 1 to spare. So, I have to kill at least 3 of those things with only 4 arrows, said Alfred. You really think... You can do it, Al, Raynor said with a smile. I believe in you. Besides, I'm pretty sure I can go 2 for 2. So you just focus on getting 3 of them, okay? All right, Alfred sighed. I'll try. Great, now let's do it. Raynor fired his first shot and struck down the scroll nearest to Zack. The remaining 4 continued closing in, although they seemed a bit more wary now. Alfred loosed an arrow and toppled another scroll. There you go, Raynor said. Just like that, only 3 to go. Alfred loosed another arrow. It grazed the scroll's arm. No, damn it, Alfred swore. It's all right, Raynor said, swallowing his doubts. But that was it. We can't afford to mess up again. I know, Alfred said, trying to calm his breathing. I won't mess up. 3 more, right? We can do it. That's right, Al, said Raynor, loading his final bolt. Deep breaths, just take it nice and easy. Alfred loosed his 3rd arrow and felled another scroll. His final arrow flew just as true. Only 1 scroll remained. Raynor took aim as the last scroll cautiously approached the unmoving prince. He pulled the trigger. The bolt flew straight, dead on toward the scroll's exposed face. Then the scroll turned abruptly. The bolt struck its back, sinking into its heavy armor, barely deep enough to wound it, but not nearly enough to kill it. Damn it, Raynor cursed. It was a perfect shot. Why did it have to turn? An arrow struck Alfred in the chest. He collapsed without seeming to make a sound, his hand reflexively flying up to the wound. With a scream, Raynor ran to him and knelt by his side. Al! Joey? Alfred murmured, struggling for breath. What happened? Did we get him? Is he safe? I messed up, Al, Raynor sniffed. I missed. You did great. You were perfect. It's fine, Joey. Alfred managed a weak smile. You've got 1 more shot. What? Raynor asked, blinking back tears. Alfred gripped the shaft of the arrow lodged in his chest and pulled. The blood began to pour from the wound as he tore the arrow free and held it out to Raynor. Alfred, no! Raynor gasped, taking his hand. Alfred made no reply. He merely closed his eyes and slumped back. His limp hand slid away, leaving the bloody arrow in Raynor's grasp. Raynor could only sit there for a moment as he tried to make sense of it all, but then Alfred's last words echoed through his mind. Raynor stood. He picked up Alfred's bow. He knocked at the bloody arrow. He took aim. He loosed the arrow that had claimed Alfred's life and let it claim another. The arrow struck the last scroll through the eye, and it fell, leaving Zack alone among the flames. Raynor dropped the bow and sank to his knees, the last of his strength gone. He let the tears flow freely. Amy continued to lie motionless in the moat, watching the scrawls as they vainly attempted to climb up the steep dirt walls. Well, this is boring, Amy thought. Come on, I'll bet I've got my strength back by now, right? She clumsily shifted herself into a position to stand up and strained against the ground. Pushing past the pain, she managed to get to her feet. Hell yeah, she thought. Now I can... Hey, there's someone over there. One of the scrawls barked. Amy cursed. Isn't that the little bitch that destroyed our bridge? One scrawl wondered. Must be, another replied. Kill her. Amy swallowed. 4 on 1, she thought. Those aren't terrible odds. Besides, none of them are armed. Neither am I, though. Yeah, well, my choices are pretty much fight them or let them kill me, so not much choice there. Bring it on, bastards, Amy called. She quickly glanced around and spotted exactly what she needed. She backed away as the scrawls began to approach her, snarling viciously. As her foot brushed against it, she crouched down and picked it up, a scrawl's sword. The weapon was even heavier than she'd expected, but it was still better than nothing. Haha, stand back, she smirked, holding the massive blade out in front of her. She thinks she's threatening us, the closest scrawl laughed in its horrible, screeching voice. Amy tensed her muscles and lunged forward. The heavy blade cleaved through the Skrull's neck with ease. The other 3 Skrulls took a couple steps back as their leader's head went flying. "Yeah, that's right," Amy grinned, recovering her balance. "That'll teach you to mess with Amy Fox. You fools are messing with the wrong girl." "You're sure quite full of yourself," one of the Skrulls growled. "Shut up, unless you want to join this bastard," Amy snapped, nudging the headless corpse with the tip of her sword. The Skrull knelt down and picked up another sword from under the burning remains of the cart. Amy cursed. "Not so tough when it's a fair fight, are you?" The Skrull sneered as it stepped forward. "Oh, you'll see," Amy replied. The Skrull jabbed at her chest. Amy sidestepped and swung her sword upward. The blade tore through the Skrull's wrist, sending its sword flying along with its hand, with a spray of metallic copper-colored blood. Before the Skrull could even cry out in pain, Amy brought the blade down and opened its throat. "You bastards were warned," Amy panted, grinning at the last 2 Skrulls. The Skrulls started toward her, barely phased. As they approached, they pulled burning hunks of wood from the wrecked cart. "You really think you can stop me?" Amy asked. "You talk too much," one of the Skrulls growled, swinging a blazing plank at her face. Amy fell backwards, losing her balance as she dodged, barely managing to throw her sword upward as she slammed into the dirt. The blade sank deep into the Skrull's chest, but as it collapsed, Amy lost her grip on the hilt. Cursing, she rolled over and pushed herself back to her feet. The last Skrull pulled the sword out of its fallen comrade and advanced on her, its violet eyes blazing. Amy glanced around and quickly found the other sword lying on the ground between her and the last Skrull. She took a deep breath and dove for it. She tore it from the severed hand's grasp and swung it upward. Just as the Skrull reached her, it blocked her swing. Amy scrambled back to her feet and backed up a few steps, holding up the sword in a guard position. "You're going to pay for all this, bitch," the Skrull snarled. "Like hell I will," Amy snapped. She barely managed to block the Skrull's first swing. The force of the impact sent her stumbling back a few steps. The massive blade was much more effective in the Skrull's hands than Amy's. Despite this, Amy managed to dodge or parry the Skrull's next few blows as well, making up for the difference in strength with her faster reaction time. Then the Skrull managed to strike her leg. Amy fell to one knee, gritting her teeth as her leg exploded with pain. The Skrull raised its blade and swung down at her again. She dove out of the way and thrust her blade up under its chest plate. The Skrull let out a growl of pain as it slammed into the ground beside Amy, dead. Amy lay there on her back for a moment, catching her breath. As the realization slowly flooded over her, she began to laugh. And there she remained, lying in the dirt, covered in sweat and Skrull blood, laughing until the pain and exhaustion overcame her, and she passed out. Schultz finished off the Skrull he'd been fighting and glanced around. The fighting in the courtyard was all but finished, and the faint glow of the rising sun could be seen over the castle walls. "It's nearly over," Schultz called. "One last push, let's finish these bastards." The several dozen soldiers still in the courtyard let out a triumphant cry in response. The handful of remaining Skrulls didn't put up much of a fight. It wasn't long before one of the young soldiers drove his blade through the last Skrull standing. "Ha!" he laughed. "That's 51, Neb, I win." "Horse manure," Neb replied. "There weren't enough for you to have killed that many." "Yeah, there were," Ben grinned. "What's wrong? How many did you kill anyway?" 50, Neb snapped. "And I know for a fact you can't have killed more than 48. "And how would you know that?" Ben asked. "Come on, just admit it. I won." "Who cares?" Schultz interrupted. "We all won." "Not quite," said Neb. "There's still the ones outside. So I'm not admitting defeat to you yet, Ben." "No, it's over," said Schultz. "The sun will deal with any left outside. There's no need to keep fighting. We've won." Wolfsbane watched with a sigh as the sunrise began to peek over the horizon. "We've lost," he thought. "It's over." He pensively looked over the ashes of the battle. Hundreds of bodies, human and Skrull alike, lay scattered and broken among the dying fires. A wasteland of death. All this for nothing, Wolfsbane thought. And on the war burns, never ending, because I don't have the strength to finish it. The surviving Skrulls began to flee the wasteland towards the thick forest just south of the castle. Many were too slow. As the sunbeams struck them, they were consumed with golden flames and reduced to nothing more than black dust. The Skrull corpses began to suffer the same fate, although with much more dignity, leaving only their victims behind. Wolfsbane remained on the hilltop long after the survivors of his army had hidden in the forest. He couldn't bring himself to look away from the castle. Still such a beautiful sight, he thought, watching the orange light dancing against the castle walls. It's a shame I didn't get to see you, but maybe soon we'll meet again, Alex. But for now, farewell. With a long sigh, he turned away and went to join his Skrulls in the forest. Alexander crossed the drawbridge and walked out onto what was left of the plains outside the castle. He watched as the fleeing Skrulls caught fire, screaming as they burned to dust. It's what you deserve, he thought, watching the last of the writhing Skrulls as they smoldered away. For what you monsters did, I hope there's room for all of you in the blackest pits of hell. Something else suddenly caught his attention. Wait, is that... With wide eyes, he ran toward it. It was. Zack lay next to a fallen tree, surrounded by fading grass fires. Alexander walked around the flames, ignoring any that licked against his legs. He knelt beside his son, gasping as he got a better look at him. Zack's face was covered in dried blood, mostly beneath his nose, and his right arm was still bleeding from the deep gashes carved into it. His armor was missing several pieces, and his clothing beneath was singed black in several places. Zack, Alexander choked. He leaned down to listen to his chest. Please, he thought, please life, not him too. And then he heard it. A heartbeat. Zack was alive. Thank you, Alexander thought, closing his eyes. Thank life. Alexander sat up and looked around for anyone that could help. Fortunately, dozens of medics had already started searching the battlefield for wounded survivors. We need help here, he called. A pair of medics approached him. Yes, sire? It's my son, Alexander swallowed. He's still alive, but you need to get him to the infirmary immediately. Yes, sire. The two medics stepped past Alexander and knelt down. Together, they carefully picked Zack up and carried him back toward the castle. Alexander rose and started after them. Raynor approached them looking frantic. When he caught sight of Zack, he breathed a sigh of relief. Is he all right? Raynor asked. I wouldn't say that, but he's still alive at least. Alexander managed with a smile. Thanks to you, no doubt. Well, I appreciate it, sire, but the one you should really thank is it's my cousin, Alfred. Well, I'd be happy to, if he died. Raynor choked through gritted teeth. To save him, he gave up whatever chance he might have had for him. Oh, Alexander swallowed. I see. I won't forget his sacrifice then. And I hope he may be eternally blessed for his heroic actions. Raynor gave a weak smile. Thank you, sire. Raynor walked off. Alexander realized the medics carrying Zack had gotten a ways ahead of him, and hurried to catch up. Schultz abruptly stopped him. Sire. What? Well, Schultz sighed, I know this may not be the best time, but there is something you need to know about. Amy's eyes flickered open. She sat up with a groan. Where? She cursed. She was back in the infirmary. Oh, good, you're awake, said her father from the bed next to hers. Exactly what the hell did you think you were doing out there? I was helping in the fight, Amy replied, clearing her throat. What was I supposed to do, not help? You're not a soldier, Amy, Fox snapped. You could have died. But I didn't, did I? Oh, Miss Fox is finally awake, came the medic's voice. Amy let out a dramatic sigh as the medic walked up to her bed. I'm going to take a wild guess and assume you didn't wind up in the bloody moat trying to find shelter, she said, frowning at her. Why do you care? Amy replied. Because now I have more work thanks to you being a dumbass, the medic replied. How in the hell did you end up in the moat? Fox asked, bewildered. Oh, after I took out the Skrull's bridge, they surrounded me, and they pushed me in. What? It's a long story, Amy said. Anyway, what happened? Is it over? Did we win? Yeah, the battle ended hours ago, the medic replied. And I've been dealing with hundreds of new patients nonstop since then, so I don't have any spare time to deal with any of your nonsense, okay? Understand? No, not really. I mean, you need to stay here and rest until I say you can leave, the medic explained, rolling her eyes. No more nonsense like what you just pulled last night, okay? I have to stay here? Amy complained. Why? I'm fine. Amy winced as pain suddenly shot through her side. Yeah, exactly, said the medic. You're not fine. I examined you myself. Your right leg's fractured and you've got a pretty nasty gash. You've also got several broken ribs, another deep gash in your shoulder, plenty of scratches and bruises, not to mention you still got the concussion. So yeah, you're gonna have to stay here for a while. It's probably a new concussion, Amy thought. But I hate this stupid place, she said. I've got a perfectly good bed at home. Why do I have to stay here? I don't have time for this, the medic muttered, turning to go check on her next patient. Wish she broke her mouth, too. Amy flopped back onto her bed with a groan. This is exactly why you shouldn't do this kind of stuff, said Fox. If you put yourself in danger, there's going to be consequences. The Christiansens are supposed to be showing up tomorrow, right? Huh? Oh, yeah, I think so, said Fox. What is that? I don't want them to see me like this, said Amy. I need to be out of this stupid place by tomorrow. No, Amy, you don't, said Fox. What's wrong with... They're not going to see me like this, Amy said, glaring at the ceiling. I'll make sure of it. So, just to be clear, Alexander said, his tone deadly calm. Half of our army deserted us during the attack. He stood at the head of the large meeting room. The castle officials were seated at the table. A few newcomers were among them, but there were less of them than there were people missing from before. Yes, sire, said Schultz. A number of our soldiers refused to help fight when called upon, and I was unable to find them within the castle afterward. And who exactly were these traitors? 4 of our knights, Bryce DeLise, James Vaughn, Dennis Mills, and Samuel Rodrigo, along with most of the men from each of their squadrons. They made up most of the deserters, Schultz answered. They were all dedicated supporters of Bliston Sharpclaw, so it seems their motives were tied to that. I see, Alexander said, breathing deep through his nose. I want them all branded as traitors. If any of them are found, they're to be executed. I would advise against that, sire, said Schultz. It may... I don't care, said Alexander. They're just as responsible for what happened last night as the Skrulls are, and they deserve the according punishment. Very well, sire, Schultz sighed. If I may interject, said Panchel Rogers. Go ahead, Rogers, said Schultz. Well, as the king said, these deserters are certainly cowards for doing this, said Rogers. But executing them for that seems a little harsh, don't you think? I don't really think it's fair to blame them for what happened. After all, the rest of the castle soldiers, nearly 8 full squadrons, participated in the battle, aided, of course, by a couple of revolutionist squadrons. So I don't think having a couple extra 100 soldiers would have made much difference. After all, we did still win, didn't we? Maybe you're right, Alexander muttered. But that doesn't matter. We don't know what difference it would have made, but it doesn't matter. If they truly just did this because of cowardice, I would be willing to show forgiveness, but that's not why they did this. They wanted to hurt me, and they did, so I cannot overlook that. They will suffer the consequences for their act of treason. End of discussion. Very well, sire, Rogers swallowed. If you say so. All right, then. I guess we'll move on to the next order of business, said Schultz. When should we hold the memorial for the fallen soldiers? Schultz. Yes, sire? Why don't you run the rest of this meeting? Said Alexander, turning away. I've got other matters to attend to. Very well, sire. Alexander left the room. He walked down the empty hallway, clenching his teeth. So, Wolfspan purred. You failed. He stood at the head of what was left of his army. Barely 100 Skrulls had reached the shelter of the trees in time, and they were now gathered before their leader, hesitantly staring at his back. Yes, Lord, one of the Skrull captains said. But our next attack will be successful, we swear. No, said Wolfsbane. There's not going to be a next attack. Why not? Asked the Skrull. We still need the Moonblade, don't we? Yes, but there are other ways, Wolfsbane sighed. Throwing your pitiful excuses for warriors at the castle over and over again isn't going to get us anywhere. No, we can do it, said the Skrull. If we just try again with more... No, said Wolfsbane. Don't you fools get it? The castle forces were in complete disorder last night. That may be the best chance we'll ever have of taking the Moonblade by force. So, what do we do then? I don't know, Wolfsbane growled. What if we attacked again right now? Suggested the Skrull. What? Once night falls, we could attack them again, the Skrull said. They'll be even weaker now than they were last night, so... Or absolutely not, said Wolfsbane. In case you haven't noticed, our forces suffered much greater losses last night than theirs did. Maybe, but could you at least let us try? Asked the Skrull. What does it matter to you if 100 more Skrulls die anyway? Wolfsbane hesitated. I said no. We're going back to the underground once the sun sets. That is final, understand? Very well, Lord. Wolfsbane stepped away from the Skrulls and sat down on a rock. The morons are right, he thought bitterly. At least, within his understanding of the situation. The Shadowbringer would say to try again. But the Shadowbringer's not here, is he? There's got to be another way, a better way, if only... Yes, that's what I need to do. That would be the best way. I just have to hope Alex has the sense to do what's right.